Is Argentina going off the deep end?
Live right now, Lance 60.1 Mar del Plata Canyon. We're looking at some sort of a robotic arm that is obviously underwater. Harriet, what is this? What are we watching?
So this is it's the live stream of a research submarine that's on this deep sea expedition just off the coast of Buenos Aires, which is exploring the Mar del Plata Canyon for the first time. It's this submarine gorge that's nearly 4,000 meters underwater. And this research sub is showing these amazing coral and fish that have never been seen before, with the scientists giving live commentary. And this video stream was only meant to be for marine biologists, but it's actually become this massive internet sensation. It's attracted more than 1.6 million views a day on YouTube, and it's all over TV news broadcasts in Argentina. So it's just astonishingly huge surprise hit.
Yeah, it's had Argentinians completely hooked. What kinds of things are they seeing that's making them so interested?
One of the things that's been the most popular is this orange starfish, which was really brightly coloured. So people were comparing it to Patrick in SpongeBob SquarePants. And there was a sea cucumber that people have nicknamed the sweet potato, a crab that kind of looked like a hairy spider. And there's been social media quizzes like, which deep sea creature are you based on how you handle stress? So apparently if you ignore the world, you're the translucent squid. And if you explode with anger, you're the pistol shrimp. So this is a big internet sensation.
So we've got translucent squid and pistol, what were they? Pistol something or other?
Pistol shrimps.
Pistol shrimp. Are they unique to this part of the ocean, Jamie? Why are the scientists focusing on this exact patch?
So the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, which is CONICET, launched the expedition of the depths of the Mar del Plata in collaboration with the Schmidt Ocean Institute. The objective of the dive is to explore the underwater region of high biodiversity where little knowledge exists up until now. More than 30 researchers from the government agency are participating in the expedition, where depths of over 3,000 meters are being explored for samples and high quality imaging of the area. They're sending kind of robotic vehicles down, obviously taking some really impressive imagery, as they were saying, but it's kind of looking at a part of the world that's underexplored, but also Argentina, or kind of the Argentinian science community, are very keen to show their worth at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, that you've got this unlikely kind of breakaway success of a live stream that, after all, is kind of showing fairly nerdy underwater action, but it seems to have captured people's imagination. Is that, Felicity, because of what Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, is doing in terms of his approach to science in the country?
I think it certainly puts a lot of attention onto Milei and his cuts and the fact that he's targeted Argentina's public science institutions. But I think it was still a kind of weird runaway success, first and foremost, that has now sort of turned political. And I really, really like that, because I think when you watch it, it's actually very, very therapeutic and calming and quiet. And with so many, I just love that in a world of so many endless distractions and high production this and high production that, it's like these tiny little creatures just going about their little lives. And I just think it's a really nice story that it has captured the attention of so many. But on the political side, it's interesting because it has obviously rallied lots of people. There are protests planned, protests that have already happened against Javier Milei, particularly because he sees himself as a climate change denier. And I thought it was quite ironic, actually. He sort of sees public science institutions as completely unnecessary. And in a 2024 speech, he said, if you think your research is so useful, go to the market like any other citizen, publish a book and see if people are interested. And that's what's so funny about this live stream. People are interested. And, you know, a lot of Argentinians also see it as a source of national pride. This is happening off the coast of Buenos Aires. They're loving what these scientists are doing. They're loving what they found off the coast of their country. And it slightly suggests that Milei is a bit out of touch, actually, as to how much people do care about science and the natural environment.
On the other hand, understand, Harriet, Argentina does have serious financial problems. Is funding this kind of science just too expensive for a country in the current predicament it's in?
It's an interesting question because the so-called scienticide, so Javier Milei effectively taking a chainsaw to publicly funded science research, is part of his broader austerity measures, which are can be summarized as slashing federal public spending, focusing on privatization and deregulation to kind of incentivize competitive market activity. And in that sense, he's removed tens of thousands of civil service jobs and made these widespread drastic cuts to social spending and public works, alongside the fact that Cornet's budget was cut 21% in real terms last year, salaries losing 35% of their value, and thousands of jobs in state-funded science and tech organizations lost since Milei came into power, which is about a year and a half ago. But it is true that Argentina's economy actually surged sort of nearly 8% in April compared with April last year. And it's the fastest GDP growth in the country since 2022. Inflation, which we've discussed on this podcast before, the Argentinian inflation rate is absolutely chronic and horrendous in the world, but it was 44% over the past 12 months and is now projected to go down to just under 30%. So on the one hand, these austerity measures are having a fiscal effect. On the other, they are massively affecting the poorest people of Argentina. They've tipped millions of people into poverty last year. Unemployment is up. Prices are up 40% year on year. And the group that's demonstrating the most every week, which is pensioners, are the hardest hit group. And Argentina is still, despite its massive bailout from the IMF, it's still locked out of foreign currency issuance. It still owes the IMF nearly $60 billion. So it's a complicated picture here. I think it really will all come down to how Milei does in the midterms in October.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, is this a kind of, well, Felicity described it as therapeutic. Is this a kind of escapism for people who are living through a pretty, god-awful period of the country's financial history?
Yeah, I think it's also really worth thinking about how important visual media is as a kind of turning point in scientific awareness and advocacy. We've seen kind of through history, like NASA's Blue Marble photo, which was taken during Apollo 17 in 1972, gave people a kind of new sense of the Earth's fragility, and a lot of people have credited it as kind of galvanizing the modern environmental movement. More recently, we've obviously seen things like Blue Planet and the David Attenborough documentaries that really do lead to kind of real policy change. Blue Planet, particularly with like scenes of plastic in the ocean and things like that we've talked about before on this program about whether or not people are able to make real change in that area, but they are galvanized by visual media. It is interesting because most of the time I think people think of science as being quite statistics heavy and data heavy, but actually maybe the things that move the dial are kind of empathy, urgency, imagination, and that is kind of encapsulated in this live stream. And so kind of looking forward, whether we need to do more of this stuff in terms of like storytelling when we're thinking of advocacy for the environment.
Yeah, storytelling does seem right, doesn't it, Felicity? I mean, does this this way of capturing people's attention with the kind of science that it turns out they want to see, does this speak to the power of visual media, video and TV and so on, and social media to get people to connect more deeply with the environment and nature and care about science and research a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as Jamie was saying, like the two sort of need to work in tandem. The idea of scientists as being sort of like musty and boring and hard to get into just clearly isn't the case. And the more that you can make it visually exciting and stimulating, the better. But you clearly don't have to do that much, as this live stream shows, which is quite gratifying in a way. I mean, I live in Folkestone, a coastal town, and they have a live stream when there's a storm. They have a live stream of the harbour, and you get loads and loads of people in Folkestone who just tune in to watch these big waves buffeting the harbour for like hours. And there was also a very popular live stream of a nesting osprey that people got obsessed with, seeing when it would have its babies and just watching it, and nothing would really happen for a long time. And then it did, and it was amazing. So it's heartwarming that people still have that connection to, nature and the natural world, and particularly because this, to me, it almost seemed like going into outer space. You know, it's one of the few places on the planet that we still don't know very much about. So there's that intrigue and that fascination with these unknown environments.
Well, definitely. And obviously, these deep sea creatures are a source of fascination and like sort of intrigue and interest. But there's also the potential for them to be worth serious money, right? We've spoken in the past on this podcast about how there's a potential gold mine in terms of what new deep sea creatures can contribute in terms of their potential application to medicine and cosmetics and so on. Is canning projects like these, Harriet, kind of short-sighted given the riches that could come from exploring the deep?
I do think that it's incredibly short-sighted because not only is there the potential for, as you said, all of these applications to be found in the deep sea environment, which it's so incredible because these submarine gorges like these ones that are thousands of meters under the sea, we know almost nothing about them. We know more about, for example, the surface of the moon, people say, than we do about the deep sea environment. So you have no idea what you're going to find. And it's short-sighted also in the sense that if you can all these research projects and you defund all these scientific organizations, you are also sparking a brain drain of your scientists and your researchers who will leave the profession. And in Argentina, we're seeing that so many of the country's top scientists that are working on things like cancer cures, for example, are having to take second jobs or go into teaching and leave science and research altogether. So it's incredibly short-sighted, not just in the future, but also in the present when you're sparking these national conversations and strikes and political dissent. And even though the Argentinian government over the past year and a half has been trying really hard to clamp down on the right to public protest, it is still happening.